Hello, I'm Sean McAngus, and welcome back to another episode of the Highland League podcast. Today's guest is Nairn County scout Calum McKenzie. In this podcast, he talks about his time as a football coach in America, his goalkeeping coaching experiences across a school team and various different clubs, how he's managed to connect with well-known faces in the football world, including Begović, former Stoke and Chelsea goalkeeper. He also tells us about how he got involved in scouting and his different experiences in that, including scouting goalkeepers for a Luxembourg top division side. And he gives exclusive insight into what it's like to scout for Nairn County. Hope you enjoy this interview. So Calum, what's your earliest football memories? What got you into football generally?
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird start, to be quite honest, because I was always that kid in primary school that if the kids were playing football, I would run on and steal the ball and then run away. So there wasn't an immediate love at first sight for football when I was in primary school. I don't like the school I went to never really had a football team, so it wasn't easy to get involved in. Then, as my brother got older, he started playing football, so I became the younger brother that would want to hang out with my cool older brother. And then it was jumpers for goalposts and playing on the playing fields in Lossie until it was pitch dark and you couldn't see the ball anymore. And there were like 20 aside, that stereotypical image. And so, yeah, that was my youngest memories, is playing football there. We used to play football anywhere there was a patch of grass. So there's an old pub in Lossie called the Cooley, and we used to play on a patch of grass there. And ever since we stopped playing there many years ago, it's just become overgrown. It's never been so well kept since we played there. So yeah, it was back then. It was my brother that I wanted to hang out with him, and I was naturally drawn to goalkeeping. I was never really interested in. I think I was far too aggressive to play outfield, and I don't think I would have lasted on a game. On a game very often. I'd have probably been sent off a few times.
Yeah, so in terms of goalkeeping, did you play for the school team or did you play for any teams?
Yeah, I mean, I played for the school teams from about the under 13s up to the senior team, all the way through high school. But I was an average player, you know. I knew where my ceiling was. I don't suppose it helped that I had the legend that is Kevin Main in front of me in high school. So that was always going to hinder me, no matter how good I was. But and then when I went to the likes of Elgin Boys Club, I remember being excited because I was like, right, cool, yeah, I'll get in this, and then we'll get some game time behind me. And then it turned out I was second to Darren Strong. So the two of the best, probably the best goalkeepers in my opinion that Murray's produced in the last, 10, 15, 20 years, Desi Strong and Kev Main. I was stuck behind, so they were the Andy Gorham to my Ali Maxwell, you know. So yeah, but I mean, actually having them and being able to watch them, although I was a distinctly average goalkeeper, I learned a lot. I always felt like I became better than I would have under studying anyone else, because just watching Kevin and watching Des, you know, play and train, then it was a great thing for me, being able to watch them. I also think that's, you know, because I was always on the bench, I was always watching the managers and the coaches, always listening into their conversations, because you're always listening in case there's an opportunity to get on. So I would always listen to them and how they watched the game, what they were looking for. So I always kind of was drawn to like the tactical, technical element of the game, even at 14, 15, 16, I kind of knew I wasn't gonna get into the Highland League as a player.
Yeah.
And then I did play for a couple of welfare teams. That was outfield. I played for them. I was blessed with a heap of pace. It's disappeared now. It's burned out now. But I was blessed with a lot of pace, so I was always stuck on the right wing. And but I think I was 16, 17 when I played in the welfare league, and I just got the crap kicked out of me, to be honest. And it wore down my knees, and my knees basically became the biggest issue. And that's when I decided, right, well, by 1999, I decided I'll go and start coaching. And doing my badges and things. I did get trials for Ross County back in '99. Ross County under 16s. I did get trials with them, so that's probably about as high as I got with them. Bye.
Yeah. So in terms of the coaching side, when kind of was your first opportunity to kind of do coaching?
So like I say, at 99, I started doing my coaching badges with the SFA. It was Neil Simpson that was the development officer at the time in the north. So it was great for me as a football fan to see Simi, and that kind of me obviously learning. And I was still relatively young. I think I was 17, 18 when I was doing those. So my first opportunity with coaching actually was just out of sheer brass neck. I had done a few coaching courses, and I was on the internet, had just started. It was just a thing, and I've seen a job going in America, and I was like, this? I'll just apply. So I just applied for it. I never expected to hear anything back about it from the company called the United Soccer Academy, based in New Jersey. And they got back to me, said, look, we'd like to have you down for a coaching session in Kilmarnock. Here's the date. And I was like, oh God. I hadn't even told my parents or anything at that point. So I was like, all right. So I went and told them. Unfortunately, when the couple of days before, I became really ill, and I wasn't going to be able to attend it, just because of the journey and things, and my asthma had kicked in, so it was just really struggling. So I told them about it. They got back in touch a few days later, because it was all email back then, and they got back in touch and said, listen, we'll do a telephone one. So they basically ran through a few coaching scenarios with me and asked me what kind of drills I'd do. And then a week later, I got told, you've been accepted and we're happy to have you out in the States. And I was like, wow, what has just happened? Because, in the space of like about a year, I had been doing my badges for about a year, and then I had no practical coaching experience. And then the first thing I get is all expenses paid out to America. And I was like, right, okay. And I remember thinking, oh, what have I done? What have I done? And I was very much inwards at that point. I wasn't such an outgoing person at that point in my life. And I was just a small boy from Lossie at that point. But no, it was brilliant. It brought me out of my comfort zone. It got me to experience a new different culture. It brought confidence out in me. We got to coach from the ages of 3 years old up to 18 years old. Massive difference with that. I mean, I remember the first group of kids I got was 3 to 5 year olds. And so the first coaching session I ever do in my entire life is with 3 to 5 year olds. And getting a 3-year-old to do something is potluck. Getting a 5-year-old, they will actually listen to you and maybe take on board what you're saying. But getting a 3-year-old to try and get you, I mean, sometimes they would just run off, and you can't leave the group of kids, and you're looking at the parents that don't get their child, and it was a brilliant experience. And obviously I got to see a lot of different coaches from different cultures out in America as well. So that was brilliant. It was a great sounding board whenever we had coaching conventions. Um, you would just talk, ask questions, and just be a sponge for all these people. So yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. So that was about 2001 that that happened. I came home from America, I think 2 days before September 11th. So I
Mm.
flew back from, like, my lasting memory of America was flying out over New York City and seeing the Twin Towers all lit up, and then 2 days later, obviously, you got that devastating news. But no, it was a brilliant time in my life to have that experience, especially as a base for to build on from that point.
Yeah. So who was there any one particular that you met out in America that kind of taught you things or you kind of learned?
There was I'll always remember a guy Craig. I think I was the only. I was the only. No, tell you a lie. There was two Scottish girls out there, and myself. So there was only three Scots, and then there was the one Welsh guy, Craig. Me and him really gelled. And he had been out there for a number of years, and he had done some work with the Welsh FA and things of that nature. And so for me, it was really him. He really helped me settle in and embed myself, get to know the culture, and just little things. When I went out there, I had more of a Lossie mumble
Mm.
tone, and I really had to learn to talk slower, don't be so fast, so that the kids could understand me. So he taught me all this, because he had the problem with his Welsh accent when he first went out there,
Mm.
and the kids just couldn't understand him. So believe it or not, there is a bit of a language barrier despite everyone speaking English. So yeah, Craig was a real great help to me. And we kept in touch for a number of years, but as it happens, we lost touch over the years. I mean, that was 20 odd years ago. So yeah.
Yeah. So did you ever have an opportunity to extend your kind of time in America, or was there options of or kind of things to pursue?
Yeah, I got offered, so I was out there for, I believe it was a 5 month contract I was out there for. I got offered to stay for another 9 months. However, I had to turn it down because I had already booked a place on college to go to college, and do my sports and recreation through college. Looking back, I made a decision to go to Murray College instead of staying in America. And I kind of think, do you know this? I could have done. I probably should have stayed in America,
Mm.
but these things happen in life, and everything happens for a reason. So I did try and go back. I think it was 2 years afterwards. I did 2003. I tried to go back, except by that point, a lot more companies had jumped on this bandwagon of getting people out to coach.
Mm.
And this company that I was going out with had sent me all the details. It was quite an interesting one. They had sent me all the details. They had sent me my plane ticket and things like that, and itineraries. But in the itinerary, first of all, the red flag was the ticket was a one-way ticket, and I was like, wait, right, okay. And then I got an itinerary, and in that itinerary it stated, don't tell US immigration that you're coming to work. Um, and don't tell them this and don't tell them that. And I was thinking, okay, probably shouldn't lie to US immigration. So I never went. It was just too many red flags for me there. And by that point, I had a couple of extra things under my belt. I'd been working with Aberdeen for a community group for a little while. I'd got an opportunity to do that. So I had more experience by that point, and I was thinking, right. And I think that's really when I got involved in coaching with the high school football team.
Yeah. So how was that coaching in high school football team?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. I Probably the first time I was doing like solo, so just purely on myself. There was no other coaches to really bounce off of, so it was a bit of an experience, that one. Sometimes you had to think on the fly.
Mm.
depending on your numbers. That's one thing I learned in America with the academy was that, session plans and prepping and having a backup prep as well
Mm.
was important because numbers don't always work in your favor. And so worth it. I was under 15s. I was coaching with Lossie, and what a great team I had. It was the likes of Martin Charlesworth was there when he was 14. Kyle Stewart and Jordan Main, they all went on to have quite long Highland League careers. So I had all them in the squad, and it was a great team. And it was a joy. They were honestly, I felt going into the high school for coaching, I was like, oh God, this is gonna what kind of grief am I going to get? And they were brilliant. The lads were all brilliant, and I never had a single problem with them. So it's no shock that I remember Jordan Main didn't turn up to a session once. I think he went on to play for Lossie, but he didn't turn up for a session once, and I think he was on North County's books at the time for the youth teams, and I thought, right, well, if you're not turning up to training, you're benched, and that was always my rule. And so he was on the bench, and we were drawing 1-1. So we got a corner. So I brought on Jordan. It was in the second half. I brought on Jordan, and he said to me, watch this, I'm going to score. And I was like, all right. So off he went, and he took the corner and scored direct from the corner, and then just ran past me, like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay, fair point made.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah. So
it was good.
yeah. So in terms of
But
yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So what was the kind of biggest thing you learned from that experience at the high school? Because it can be a bit
um,
difficult because you've got guys who are maybe playing for clubs as well as.
yeah, there was like, so I'd experienced that sort of atmosphere when I played for the high school myself as well. We had a couple of guys on, Kev Main, I believe, was on Dundee United's youth books at the time. So we had that kind of atmosphere. So I had a little bit of experience with that because sometimes you can get the kids that maybe they don't put in as much effort, because it's almost a little bit below them. The high school is like a training thing for them because they're on to bigger things. But these guys that I had, thankfully, I never had to deal with that because they were all quite brilliant. They had their laughs and they mucked about, as 14-year-olds do, but there was no real egos, if you like, that I had to contend with, which was good.
Yeah, so how did you kind of switch? Obviously, you'd experienced in terms of, you played as a youngster as a goalie. How did that come about to switch from, coaching teams to specifically the goalie coaching element?
Yeah, so that one came about. I had started working with, well, Charlie Charlesworth was the head of youth development for Elgin City at the time, and obviously I had coached Martin, his son, and he was in touch with me because of Martin, and he got in touch with me when I left Lossie High School and asked me if I would come along and do, because he knew I was a goalkeeper back in the day, and he asked me if I would come along and just help some of the youth team kids. So it was by no means a permanent gig, but it was just to help the goalkeepers get a grasp of things. That one was, so that one was good. So that made me think, do you know this? I quite like this specialised, because the goalkeeping is a very specific specialisation. It's not just, I hate to see when goalkeepers just get put in the goals and it's just ball after ball and the ball, shot after shot, and you just see the goalkeeper. He's not even got the other ball, one ball out of the net before the second or third shots come in again. You are just a punching bag for balls at that point. So, I did want to get into goalkeeping because I felt like it was an area that could be specialised in those days. I never once growing up had a goalkeeping coach, you know.
Mm.
So and I felt like that always maybe hindered me a little, you know. So I always felt the need to give back to that, because I always enjoyed being a goalkeeper. And it's a shame because some goalkeepers really want to be a goalkeeper, and I've seen plenty over the years that have jacked it in because they'll get more coaching outfield.
Mm.
So they'll go and do that rather than have balls just pinged at them constantly, which is a bit of a shame. But so yeah, I really started to focus in on the goalkeeping side of things. And I mean, when I was at Elgin, that's when I met a young 12-year-old Colin Charlesworth when he was at Elgin. He's now obviously just been made the Huntly manager, and which just makes me feel old. Seeing him in the Huntly job now. Players you coached when you were 14, retiring from playing makes you feel old.
Oh, you look young for your age.
I think it
But
helps because I started coaching young. You know, it's
yeah,
like I was really young when I first started.
yeah, and you haven't coached like a Fort William or something, so
Yeah.
you're not completely cracked up yet. So in terms of one of the things I noticed was the SM goalkeeper academy. How did
Yeah,
that
Academy.
explain a bit about that and kind of how did that come about?
Yeah, so the goalkeeping academy was SM is Steve Marcella. So I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Marcella, Sean. He was head goalkeeping coach at like the likes of Cali Thistle.
Mm.
Um, and he eventually went on to become chief scout at Hibs and Kilmarnock. And I believe recently he's been out in India and places like that and coaching and things in there for the last number of years. I've recently just got back in touch with him. I found him on LinkedIn and we've reconnected through LinkedIn. So we've been chatting about things like the old days. And so he brought me into that. Once I decided I was going to be a goalkeeping, I met him through just Lossie, you know, and the opportunity came up. So I went with him and I learned a lot from Steve. He was a good guy. Learned a lot about the technical aspect of goalkeeping, not just, you know, drills. It was more, you know, hammering down on the technical and the tactical side of it. I mean, tactically, there wasn't, not much was demanded of goalkeepers back then, you know, before Pep came along. And, you know, that made us realize we've got feet. And, so, you know, it was more the technical aspects of it, you know, just, you know, body movements, body shape, things really drilling down on them that helped me adjust my and fine tune my sessions a lot better. His academy didn't, I mean, I don't think it was around too long because he got offered the Hibs
Mm.
um, the Hibs role, so it didn't last too long. But it was good for this area to have something like that, and I don't think it's had anything like that since until the likes of Alan Main has just come back to the area and
Yeah.
started his own academy. So I think it's brilliant to see his that kind of thing come in for goalkeepers, and it's the fact that they're getting one-to-one experience as well, which is something that Steve Marcella did as well. You know, he would do groups and one-to-ones, and I do feel like there's a bit of a market for that kind of academy in this area, especially in Murray.
Yeah, so in terms of what kind of goalkeepers was there any specific goalkeepers you worked with, through that time with the academy or
None that none that none that ever that I know of that ever made it, you know, through the ranks of Elgin or anything like that or Highland leagues. But I mean, they may well have been. It's my mind's probably a bit foggy on that one, you know, because I think that was about 2002, 2003. So that was about 20 years ago. But they may well have, or at least they may well have moved along. I think it was a lot of RAF children that came to it as
Hmm.
well, and
Yeah.
it was that kind of thing. But yeah, none that I'm aware of.
Yeah. The most random thing was I noticed in your kind of LinkedIn in your
Yeah,
terms and reviews you had a review from Becca, is it Begović or what's his
Begović, Asmir.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
how like what's your link to him obviously
Um,
for Chelsea and Stoke and teams like
yes.
over the years?
So Asmir, I really was starting to get. I find LinkedIn fantastic for connecting with ex pros,
Hmm.
and I was at that point I was going through a spell of just basically just being really cheeky and reaching out to ex pros and just asking them questions. Just like, hey guys, would you mind me if I just spitball a few questions to you? You can answer them. Scouts, ex players, their experience with scouts, just anything like that. So I could, even if there was just a small nugget that I could keep, in there. Um, I connected with him and he sent me a message after he accepted my connection request and just said, hey, thanks for reaching out, thanks for the connection. I sent him a polite message back. This was on New Year's Day last year. And we basically spent the next 4 or 5 hours just geeking out about goalkeeping. And he was asking me about my coaching journey. He could not have been nicer. And I always look back and think that was so nice of him to give me that time of day on New Year's Day. Just he didn't need to. He could have just said thanks for the connection, and that was it. But he spent hours speaking to me, and then he eventually we spoke for a few days after that. We exchanged details, and we've off and on kept in touch since then. So he was brilliant. He sent me a free pair of his AB1 gloves. He then the two goalkeepers that I was coaching for the Lossie youths at the time, Jai and Nairn, they were obviously they knew who Asmir was, so I got them to send them personalised autographs saying good luck for the season. So I got them that, and he, just an absolute brilliant guy. He's got a lot of time for people, and I just think you're one of the good ones. So yeah, it's a bit random. I mean, no one believed me when I told them that I was speaking to them, and they're like, right, okay, whatever, Calum. He's just going off on one again.
Yeah, but no,
But
it's pretty cool. It's cool because he's a guy
stands
that
out.
a lot of people know who he is because obviously
Mhm.
match your day, seen him play.
Yeah,
No, that's such that's a
chat, chat, chatting to him on the phone was surreal.
hmm,
And it was brilliant because I just got to see how down to earth he was, and he's so good with his. He's got his own goalkeeping academy, which is something that I spoke to him about, and I was talking about him about how there was a gap in the market here because I had spoke to him and asked him, have you got any academies in Scotland? And he says, no, we've not reached Scotland yet. We've got many over England, and he's got ones back in Bosnia.
hmm,
I believe he's got ones in Germany. So he's really into this academy, and me and him spoke about me running an academy up here for him. But when I went out and tried to find some facilities that would work with me and get this on board, because we needed something like the an astro pitch and things of that nature, and I just couldn't get any kind of traction on it. Um, and again at that point I was taking on a lot, so I really had to be careful. So it's possibly something that I could reach out again and 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 look into. But yeah,
that
it is a fairly random one. Yes.
that is cool. So how important is that aspect of yourself in terms of not being scared to reach out to people where ours maybe wouldn't take the punt and message or whatever in terms of
Yeah, I think it is important just to have that, and I think just that brass neck of just what's the worst that can happen here. They're just going to ignore my message, you
that.
know, and that is it. And now I have sent many requests to people for like questionnaires or just can I sponge information off of you, and a vast majority do get back to you, but you get ones that just don't, and or you get ones that have retired now and they've moved on from football and they just don't want to have anything to do with it, and that's fair. So yeah, it's about having the confidence and the brass neck and just realizing I'm the one that's going to gain things from this. Asmir Begović or whoever is not going to gain anything from talking to me. You know. So it's just about being that little bit more finding something that separates you from everyone else. Yeah.
Yeah. So who's the kind of other people you've kind of with over the years that are kind of people would know that it's been through
Um,
that, through just
yeah.
going out there and just doing it.
So like I say, I was sending out like Q&A almost stuff to some ex pros, and I just simplified questions, so doing a bit of research on them. How did it feel when you did this? What was your experience with this? And I always tended to ask some scouting questions. What was your first experience like with a scout?
Mm.
Can you remember that? Talk me through that. And just to try and help me, from a scouting perspective. So I was doing these and then publishing them on my LinkedIn page. Always asking them first, do you mind if I put them on my LinkedIn page? No, on you go. That's fine if you think it'll be any use. So I would do that. And a gentleman, Adam Hobson, from the Professional Football Scouts Association, PFSA, he reached out to me and said, I really like what you're doing. Would you mind doing some of these for us, freelance? And I was like, wow, okay, yeah, no, not a problem. So once I had that, it was brilliant because it was no longer then just, it was still for me personally, it was still for me to get learning, but it was also great that it was also going to be published to a bigger audience as well. So I mean, I hate to name drop and things like that, but since you have asked, so it was the likes of, I mean, recently I've done ones with Kevin Thompson, ex-Rangers, Middlesbrough, and Hibs. I've done Gordon Smith, ex-Rangers, Man City, and Scottish chief executive, I think he was, and he was director of football at Rangers. That one was interesting because he was director of football at Rangers during the takeover, the £1 takeover. So I got a good insight into that from him. And then, who else have we got? Who else have we spoke to? So the first one I ever did was Stuart Miller. He was ex-chief scout at Aberdeen with when Craig Brown was there. He was Scotland's scout for West Bromwich Albion, and he was also director of football and chief scout for the likes of Ross County as well. He's just gone back to Ross County in the last few days. He's just been appointed their chief scout for Scotland. So I did reach out to him and congratulate him for that. Mark Warburton, he gave me all the time. And it's not one that I thought would. I don't know why. I just thought I didn't know if Mark would want to entertain some little old guy from Lossie, but he got back to me and he was brilliant as well. Gavin Ray, former Rangers midfielder, he's out in Australia now.
Oh yeah.
So the one that I'm doing soon is ex Lisbon Lion Willie Wallace. So he's out in Australia as well. So it can be difficult sometimes because you've got these time differences, so there is a big delay in communication. But if you just stick with it, and I think that separated me because it wasn't just, hey, how's it going? Got any advice? It was they could see that you've done research on them, and you're more interested in their thoughts and their feelings behind certain situations, and it's so it's just a fan wanting to broad my experience there. So yeah, I mean the biggest thing that probably ever happened to me was not the Begović one. Was when I was in America. We played the academy coaching staff because we were all relatively young and fit back then. We played a charity match against the New York, New Jersey Metro Stars. So the Metro Stars are now what are known as the New York Red Bull
Mm.
team. So they were formerly the Metro Stars. And we played a charity match against them at Giant Stadium in New York. And I think I played against Lothar Matthäus. So he was two-time Ballon d'Or winner. Lothar Matthäus had the great pleasure of marking some wee guy from the Lossie Council Estate that wouldn't shut up the whole game. And I'm so sure he didn't have a clue what I was saying the whole time, you know. And so yeah, that was quite surreal. I don't know, couldn't really focus on the game because I knew I was 2 yards away from a Ballon d'Or winner, you know, and then just a few more yards away there was Ian Woan, who used to play for Nottingham Forest. You know, like the contrast here is significant. So yeah, it was an experience playing against him. I don't think as many people for a bang average footballer.
Mm.
Yeah, I got to play against Lothar Matthäus, so that was my highlight.
What did you get past him?
I didn't know he did go through the back of me. He did go through the back of me. I had tried to meg him, and I think that was shortly after that I got clattered through me. So I think that was a don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh,
And I was
that's
like, okay, can I just switch to midfield? Is that all
yeah.
right?
That's just so funny.
Yeah.
But so how did you kind of get involved with scouting? How when it,
Scouting. I think, like I mentioned previously, I think the tactical side of the game had always intrigued me because, um, you know, from high school onwards, I knew, right, well, there's a ceiling to my playing career here. Um, so I've got to have a plan B, and that came from my father. My father always said to me, you know, well, he was always one to keep my feet on the ground and say, you know, you've got to have a backup, you know. So you might not make it as a player, but then what? So that's when I started doing my coaching courses, obviously. Then the scouting thing happened, and because I 2000, I took a long 10 years, I believe, away from the game, you know, and that was through a bad experience that I'd had in my um, late 20s. From I was coaching with a team. I won't name the team, but I was coaching with a team and doing the goalkeeping, and I had been told it was one of the first team goalkeeping coaches, one of the older guys, had come up to me and said, "Look, what are you doing with them?" So I ran through what I'd been doing with them, and I got a long lecture about how you young kids and your coaching courses, and you do a couple of coaching courses, and you all think you're Ferguson. And so I was like, and it wasn't the first time I had experienced that. I had a good 10 years of people moaning about my age, you know. So I just decided, you know, this, I think I might just pack this in, focus on my day job for a bit, come back to this when I'm older, in my late 30s, you know. I overshot the late 30s by a little bit, and I came back to coaching. I seen Lossie were looking for coaches, and so I thought, well, I'll go and do that. And Kevin McNally, who's the head of youth development at Lossie Football Club, I owe a lot to him for giving me that opportunity to come back in and do the coaching. And you know, Lossie paid for my coaching courses, which was brilliant of them. So I do owe a lot to them for that opportunity to get me back into the coaching, because if I hadn't done that, then I would never have got involved in the scouting. I realised pretty quickly that the goalkeeping coaching physically it was starting to hurt. Hurt my knees. My knees were starting to be a bother again. So I started thinking, well, there's not going to be longevity in the physical coaching aspect of this. But Kyle Stewart, who I had coached back in the high school days, was actually coaching for Lossie by this point, Lossie Youths, and he was a scout for Aberdeen. So I used to pick his brains about the scouting, what courses did you do, and that's when I started doing the talent ID courses through the SFA. So I did my 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and then I started broadening out to the PFSA courses, really doing the opposition analysis, and tactical scouting courses. And I really started thinking, oh, this is really good. And I started looking for opportunities. Kyle then messaged me, screenshotted me that Nairn were looking for opposition scouts. And I was like, wow, brilliant. So let's get involved. So I sent them an email and they were more than happy to have me on board. So it was and I said, right, well, this is going to be a learning curve, because I've never done scouting. And I mean, the biggest bit of advice I was given on one of the courses was you have to learn to not watch the game as a fan, because you've always kind of watched the game. So, Sean, when you're watching the game, you're watching it for enjoyment. You're watching it for an entertaining moment, or someone scoring a worldie, or so you're watching it for these moments, and ultimately you either want Team A or Team B to win. When you're scouting, and it wasn't something I'd ever really contemplated, but when you're scouting, you're not really caring about the result as such. It's more about what happens within the game. So I love the fact that when you're looking at it, you're looking for, common patterns of play. You're looking for, anyone that's working combinations frequently, so fullbacks, wingers, these kind of overlapping runs. Are they working like that? How do they distribute the ball? From the centre backs, the wing backs, the goalkeeper. How comfortable are they with their feet? These kind of things. So yeah, it's Kyle got me involved in scouting. He got me the bug for it. And then Nairn gave me the opportunity.
Yeah, so going back a bit about your brief spell in terms of to do with goalkeeping scouting with the Luxembourg side, how did that come about? And it must have been a bit strange. It's like quite an unknown league,
Yeah.
fair to say.
Yes. I mean, I had no prior knowledge of it. Bar Football Manager. I had no prior knowledge of the Luxembourg League. So that again was through contacts on LinkedIn. And it's a frequent commonality throughout my stories, that one, especially in the last few years. So that one was coming through LinkedIn, and I had reached out to someone that I knew was involved in the club and just asked about it. Not necessarily asked, oh, can I get an opportunity? It was just, how does it work? What's it like? What's the standard of football like? And the conversation just led to, do you want to get involved? And because we could do with somebody that could tell us, about goalkeepers, about the technical aspect of goalkeeping. So what they would do is they would just email me through maybe one or two goalkeepers they wanted to have a look at, and send me the video of their last game, and I would watch it. It was difficult because the game footage was obviously following the game. So, excuse me. So there would be times where the goalkeeper was out of sight. So I can't tell just, his positioning where the ball is at certain points. So I could only give them feedback on what I can see, at corners, free kicks, one-on-ones, positioning, how they, control their box, how they come for corners. So it was a good experience. The standard of football, I would say, was probably somewhere in between our League Two and Highland League. Very, very low crowds. So more like the Highland League kind of crowds. So you're not looking at thousands, for a game. But there is what it is, and I enjoyed it, and I got a lot of experience out of it. But like I mentioned, at that point, I did that for about 2 or 3 months, and then it got too much. It was like I mentioned, I was coaching twice a week there, scouting on the Saturday, a game on the Sunday. And then there was hours of video editing throughout the week, along with my day job. So I felt like maybe I was stretching myself too thin at that point. So I got what I could from it. It was a good experience, and they were brilliant with me, the club, and yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird. Is it sort of what did you make of like kind of their quality of goalkeepers that you were kind of looking at? Is it possibly a
Yeah.
league that's kind of untapped potentially
Um,
to an extent?
yeah, to an extent, it's probably the goalkeepers were probably I would I would probably say they're at probably the same level as Highland League. Do you know what I mean? So if it if you think of the Luxembourg Premier League as Highland League, um, just shy of League Two,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, where they made a lot of mistakes that in another league would be punished, you know.
I know what you mean.
Whereas in this league they got away with it, you know. Maybe the striker's reaction time isn't as good as it would be in another professional league, where so if they didn't cleanly catch a ball and it rebounded a little, they would have time to
Hmm.
pounce on the ball and reclaim it. But in another league, you would be punished for that, you know. So it has its place. I mean, I don't think they're full time, you know. So they're not full time players. So they all have another kind of career on top of that, as I think most of the lower kind of leagues do.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was just bizarre. It's not a
Stands out.
yeah. It definitely stands out because I mean a lot of people criticize Scottish football as being quite unknown, but um
Oh, it's probably like I mean the Scottish Premiership would be, you know, mind blowing compared to the Luxembourg Premiership, you know,
yeah. So in
English
terms of
Premiership.
yeah. So going back to Nairn, so in terms of obviously you've talked about how you kind of watch the games and stuff like that. How like what is your kind of role in terms of working with the manager and director of football? Can you explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so working with Stephen Mackay and Graham McLeod, they've both been brilliant since I came on board, and I'm in regular contact with them. Uh, they probably nod and smile when I message a lot because I just constantly message them. I'm just obsessed with football, so it's just constant football chat. But as Stevie says, that's the kind of person you want
Mm.
scouting, you know, someone who does love the game and does love talking about it. So they've been great with me ever since I came on board. The feedback I've received from them has been confidence building, you know. I just seem to have taken to the scouting like a duck to water. And I still got a lot to learn. You know, still got a lot to learn, and I will if I'm doing a report for a team and a particular player stands out, I will put a section in for this, you know, like standout player. Here's what I liked about him. Here's what I think would be beneficial to Nairn. So, I mean, that does involve getting to know the manager over a period of time. So, you know, and working out what style of play he's got, what players have Nairn got, how do they play, you know, are they a counter-attacking team? Do they need pace?
Mm.
You know, this kind of thing. So, an example of that is, I mean, Nairn have just recently signed Horace Ormsby from Devon
Mm.
Vale. So I mentioned him in my scouting report. I believe one of my first scouting reports. I mentioned him in when I went to Devon Vale to watch Devon Vale, and I actually think I was there to watch the opposition rather than Devon Vale, but Ormsby stood out to me. He was just big, powerful, pacey, you know, has got a finish in him as well. So I mentioned him, I put all that down, and I got a message from Stevie when they signed him, and I didn't know they'd signed him at this point. I just got a message back from him saying, I remember the guy you mentioned from Devon Vale? And we had this conversation, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was like, see, I do listen to you. So it does, there've been, I think 4 or 5 that I've really seen that I think would benefit the Nairn squad, and how they play. And I've put them down, and so it's good to see that the fruit of your work come through when they do agree with you and they sign them. Nairn are definitely going through a purple patch at the moment, and Stevie's definitely turned them around and got them playing a certain way, and I think I think Stevie likes that mentality of never give up.
Mm.
The amount of late winners that Nairn have had recently is phenomenal. So they obviously don't give up until the final whistle. So yeah, it's great to have that working relationship where I can just message them whenever I want. I'll always message Stevie or Graham saying, look, I'm thinking about putting this into my next report or doing this. And they're like, yeah, the more information, the better. So yeah, it's good to have that communication. And I think that's key is just keeping in touch with them and, finding out what works. Cause sometimes I might put something in the report, it's not always easy because, the Highland League isn't really tracked for stats, and online. So you kind of have to do a lot of work yourself. And, with my scouting, what I'll do is I'll break down stats. So I'll go through the opposition's goals. So when they've scored the goals, and I'll break that down into 10-minute increments. So, and put it into graphs for them so they can see maybe a team concedes more in the first 10 minutes after half time, indicating that they're slow starters, and that's the time that you can then get on them from the first whistle at the second half. And so it's little bits like that I give Nairn that aren't tracked anywhere else, So yeah, it's sometimes they don't work. Sometimes I'll put something in and it's of no value. So I won't do it again, So yeah, it's hit or miss sometimes, but usually it's a hit. It's been going well. Yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of obviously you're now head of scouting rather than, just opposition. What would you say in your own words is the sort of player that like Nairn looks for, or players, generally what style, like what kind of player is there a
I
certain
would say that that work ethic,
Mm.
is definitely something that I think they're looking for is that never say die, never give up, and really having belief in yourself. I think Stevie's kind of got a real good balance in the squad of youth and experience. You've got the likes of Ross Tokley, still playing, still scoring at 44. And then you've got the youngsters that have come in from the likes of County. You've got George that's coming from County, and he's been amazing on the wing for Nairn. And you've got the young boys there at the moment, Aaron Nicholson, Kieran Young, who they've developed a lot. And I think Aaron Nicholson, I think the amount of goals he's scored this season, which is something that we were definitely lacking at the start of the season. I think we went the first 5 games, lost the first 5 games, and didn't score in the first 5 games. So, considering we had that start, I think we're doing well to be where we are in the league. But yeah, I think that kind of pace, pacey players, where fitness comes in. So, if you've got the fitness, if you've got the pace, I think that's where it'll give you the edge. Why we've got so many late winners is because we've still got that fitness, you've still got that pace, even in that late stages. Whereas some of this, defenders in the Highland League might just be, coming down. They might not have the fitness at that point in the game. And if you've still got the legs and you've got that natural pace,
Yeah.
you stand a chance of just nipping behind them. So yeah, I think, the the pacey side of things, but definitely the fitness levels is something as well.
Yeah, so in terms of, has there been our players that kind of Nairn signed over your time there that you've kind of recommended or, kind of
Um, no, there was I was asked to look at one in particular. I won't say, but there was one that I was asked to look at in particular, a left back, and he ticked the boxes, but it just didn't come off, you know. So yeah, it I have seen some great young players in the Highland League myself, you know. I really rate the likes of Calum Frame at Forest. I like him. I think every time I watch him, he seems to have a decent finish on him. You know, he seems like a natural finisher. There's Michael Dangana at Huntly, and he's 20, and he's a big, strong guy. And he's a bit like Horace. Got pace on him. He's got two good feet. He is a very entertaining player. You know, he works the wing well. And he does track back as well, which is good to see, you know, so he does put in a shift. And then there's the other one that I do like is Calum Haspel at Rothes. Naturally a centre back. I know he's been playing a lot of right back recently. So he's a nice defender. He's taken to the Highland League. Well, this is his first year in the Highland League. He's come back from Spain. He was out playing football in Spain for a bit and came back to Rothes because, I mean, Calum was a player that I spoke to. I used to speak to him on LinkedIn quite a bit when he was out in Spain and just ask him how he was getting on. And then one day I went to scout Rothes and I seen the name on this team sheet and I was like, it can't be. And then I seen him running out and I was like, it is him. So yeah, it's a small world sometimes. And then he's been really impressive this season. So there are a lot of good young players plying their trade in the Highland League right now.
Yeah, so do you generally just look at the Highland League or do you look elsewhere? What's the kind of the
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much knowledge on for the likes of the juniors. Limited knowledge on that, but yeah, it just so happens that if I am, so when I go to a game, I'm not necessarily looking for a player, you know, unless Nairn have specifically sent me to go and actually look at a player.
Yeah, yeah.
There might be a player that they're interested in that they say, look, if you could just make some notes on player A while you're watching the game. But yeah, it's generally just to go on opposition scout, and then if I do happen to see someone off my own back, that you know maybe he's a centre back that's good with his feet, good distribution, then that happens to fit whatever Stevie wants, then I'll maybe drop a wee paragraph about him and just say, look, he might be worth getting one of the other scouts to look at, because there is a team of about 4 or 5 of us. So
Oh, that's quite a
uh,
lot. That's quite a lot. I
yeah,
wouldn't expect. So
so they've got 4 or 5 that cover quite a wide range. So again, I think that just comes down to football and your connections. I think so. When they put out that, I think there was a decent interest when they put out that message for opposition scouts about 14 months ago now. And I believe it was Stevie's idea because it was just after he joined. I think he joined in the October 2022 and November, December was when we all got taken on. So, they take good care of us. And I mean, if we're watching a game in the Highland League, and we see a player, then we will recommend it. And then it's down to the manager or the director of football if they want to take it anywhere. It's not something I take personally if they're not interested in him, if doesn't fit he's not their cup of tea, then that's fine. You've done your bit by just suggesting it, as it might be an option. And they can keep the name in a drawer, for a few months if they want. like the Horace thing. I mean, I
Mm.
mentioned him, a year ago, you know, so but the opportunity might not be have been there to make a move for him at that point. So, but at least they've got the name and they know what to expect from him. So it's just about dropping it in when you do notice these people. But yeah,
Yeah, he's a good capture. I've been really impressed because I stay in
uh,
enough and he just looks so
he was
strong. Stuff.
always a step ahead whenever I watched him. He was always a step. That's no disrespect to the
No, I know.
Dale team, but he was making runs, really smart runs that they weren't picking up on. you know. So his football brain was clearly there. He knew what he needed to do in his role, and yeah, I'm really excited about him. Playing for Nairn. I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah, so in terms of you said there's kind of different there's like four different scouts. Do they cover like juniors or are they just across the patch or what's the
I Yeah, again, they're just Highland League, so opposition scouts. So, for example, we've got ones that can cover Inverness, Brora. Got ones in Aberdeen for covering the likes of Banks of Dee. We've got people further south as well, that they can call on, if they need to. And then there's like myself, who obviously I'm based in Lossiemouth, but I'll go to Huntly or Turriff or Rothes or somewhere. I'll go wherever they send me. I very rarely say no because it's a free game of football. So
Is that yeah. Is that part
just
of
there
the
to trouble.
yeah, so is that like part of do you get paid or is it just like a voluntary thing or what's kind of
So
this
it's voluntary,
yeah.
but they do take care of you. They do take care of you in the sense that you get your petrol paid for and things like that. Do you know what I mean? So,
Get into the
um,
football for free, yeah, you said, yeah.
yeah. So you get in for free. So it's that to me is a perk. It keeps me busy. None of my mates are really into football, so I've never surrounded myself with football mad mates. So um, I'd have always been going by myself, but now I've got a legitimate reason to go by myself. So um, so yeah, there's been many a picture turn up in the newspapers or on social media of just me sat by myself,
Looking
in the
serious in the
stand,
corner.
just so yeah, it's quite funny when I see myself and I'm like, oh, God, I look like an idiot, just sat there with Billy no mates.
You won't be the only one. So
No,
in terms of, do you feel like there's obviously there's players such as H and stuff who have came up, up the road for whatever reason.
yeah,
Do you feel like there's maybe opportunity to look at players, possibly in England, in your lower reaches, if
yeah.
you're able to see them, kind of.
Yeah, there's like the regional leagues and things like that. What would probably be, our welfare or their junior leagues.
Hmm.
Um, there's bound to be players in there, or the likes of. I mean, there are some people that came from like Aberdeen's youths that are now plying their trade in the Highland League, for Banks of Dee
Yeah.
um, and people like that. So there is opportunities to play for them in the Highland League. There was a spell where I think Fort William were taking a lot of people up from down south,
Aye.
and they've either moved on or gone back.
Aye.
I think it didn't help them, dropping out of the league. Um, but yeah, I know they were big on that for a long time. And I know Lossie signed the boy Drew, who had played for uh, Fort William as well, but that never panned out well, I don't think. But yeah, so I mean, it can be hit or miss, but it's the same with any signing, But there's definitely talent there, that if you're willing to. I mean, I remember from reading the likes of Alex Ferguson's autobiography that he used to hire a bus and drive down to Glasgow and scout people, and then drag them up to Aberdeen. And that's how he got the likes of, Alex McLeish and people like that. That's how he discovered them, because, he used to hire a bus and hire a minivan and go down to Glasgow, and scout them himself. So it's you can find a gem, and I'm sure there's gems in there was the likes of Jake Stewart who came from Rothay Rovers and signed for Martin and United, and I think he's just gone on loan to somebody else. I didn't read
To
that
Keith,
today.
yeah, I think it's to Keith.
Yeah, that's it, to Keith, and I think he bagged himself 43 goals last year in the juniors. So there's obviously a goal scoring talent there. I don't know if he got many opportunities at the club this year, so that's maybe why he's gone out on loan. So yeah, hopefully. I mean, I was keeping an eye on him when I was at Lossie coaching, and I do think that scouting is something that the Highland League should, clubs should get involved with, because there's people out there, that want to get involved in scouting. I mean, I had a guy get in touch with me over LinkedIn last weekend asking me questions about how to get involved in scouting, and I remember putting out those messages to people. So I give them a lot of time, and I sent them a Word document for just advice, do's and don'ts, and how to better yourself, and what to watch for, and there's some negativity out there in the world where volunteering seems to be a dirty word,
I know.
Yeah, there's a lot of things saying, oh, well, clubs take advantage of volunteers, and, maybe that is the case somewhere, in the world, but it's not something I've valued at Nairn, even at Lossie, it's like you're giving up your time, and I do think that, these people that want to get involved shouldn't be discouraged, to get involved. And I sent him I created a scouting template that I use while scouting for Nairn, and I mean, mine is probably more complicated that for a newbie. So I broke it down just to the basics of team lines and pitch conditions and who's playing and subs, and just an analysis page. And I sent him that and said, look, take that, go watch some games. That was my advice. I think he was from Aberdeen, so I said, go nip down to Banks of Dee and pretend like you've been sent there to scout them. Fill out a couple of these scouting reports, and then you've got something to show clubs. You've got something to show clubs that you can then say, look here, I've done a few scouting reports. Are you interested in having a scout? I'm quite happy to volunteer. I don't know if other clubs in the Highland League have scouts themselves.
I've never heard anything, to be honest. I mean, you're the first I've heard of. I mean, they might do. But
I know. It was something Stevie says he wanted to bring in when he joined. When because he had been obviously assistant manager at Elgin. And so I think he was keen on bringing it into Nairn. So, and I think Nairn have paid dividends from. I mean, the thing is, you can go to a game and there might only be one or two things that Nairn pick up from your report, but that's one or two things that they've got that they wouldn't have had, and whether that's the guy playing at right back is actually a left shooter, and just these little things that can help, so it's just about giving yourself every advantage, and I think Nairn have shown this season that it does pay dividends,
Yeah. So what in terms of your what are your kind of future ambitions in terms of scouting? What are you have you got certain?
Yeah, I mean, that one is like, it's difficult to answer that one because also I'm really enjoying Nairn and the way they treat me, and I've got so much more to learn, with regards to scouting, and I always want to get myself in positions where I'm tested, and I would like to scout, at a higher level. Of course I would. But the way I see it is I've got plenty of time, I've got plenty of time. And right now it's about gaining as much experience as I can and trying to implement that into the way Nairn play. And I found through the years that you could be the best football scout there is and be at the Highland League level. But if nobody knows you exist, then you're never going to get the opportunity, So I do believe that connections are important to progression. It's just about biding your time, sponging as much experience as possible for now, and then see what happens. As a scout, you are a smaller cog in a bigger wheel. It's that's the way I always see it. There's always the bigger picture, and you're just a little part of that, but you are an important part of that. So I would like to go as far as my ability allows me to go. But it's about me. I like to think of it as my online presence when I'm on my LinkedIn and things like that. It's about building your own personal brand,
Aye, yeah.
So you are building a brand of sorts. Really happy at Nairn. And it was, as the time's gone on with Nairn, I really have, you do start to feel an affinity to the club. And, if I scout a team and Nairn don't win against them, I take it personally. It's almost like no, that was one that I scouted. Just like, I must have missed something, or maybe I forgot to write something. And so, yeah, it's I would obviously, love to be higher, but like I say, I mean, even at 41, mind you, I'm only just hanging on to 41. I've still got plenty of time left, and that's what I was meaning when I said earlier, John, about the longevity of coaching for me physically wasn't there, but there is such longevity in scouting because it's got arms and legs. You can go down, technical scouting, opposition scouting. There's sport director courses. There's director of football. There's all these kind of avenues that you can go down. So it's a big tree with lots of branches that you can pick.
Yeah. So in terms of Highland League, generally, do you see the league becoming kind of more attractive over the years as kind of a way for people to put themselves in the shop window to an extent? Do you feel it's kind of improved so much over even the last few years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do. It's especially for like the young players being released. We mentioned people that are maybe down south, or even the likes of your Aberdeen ones that have been let go, Inverness, Ross County, these kind of areas, because it's so local to us. There is the opportunity to come and put yourself in the shop window and almost reinvent yourself, at the Highland League level or the Lowland leagues. So yeah, I definitely do. I see that as a positive thing, because if these players are coming from these clubs, then these clubs seen something in them. It's just not worked out. And if you bring that talent to the Highland League, then it can only benefit it. I go to some teams and there's low crowds, but then they still manage to bring an atmosphere. And there are some gems in the Highland League that should be playing higher, that should be playing higher. I don't know if clubs in League Two or League One scout Highland League. They've probably got a lot of the central teams have probably got the Lowland League to look at more than the Highland League. But I definitely think the Highland League has got players that should be playing higher levels. So yeah, I do see it as a place where players can come and reinvent themselves if they had the disappointment of being released. I know that the SFA and the FA have, exit trials and things
Yeah.
of that nature, but I mean, I think it's best if these players who are released, it's good for them to just be proactive and put yourselves out there to be signed by just being asking for trials, asking, to attend training, whether it's by their local team. So yeah, I think Highland League can only benefit from these players joining the league.
Yeah. Final question. What do you think's been
Mhm.
the most surreal kind of moment, like pinch me moment for you so far, over the course of your kind of involvement with football, would you say?
Um, I would say probably the two that probably kind of go to head to head that would be hard to split is probably my time in America, um, because that happened so young, because it was um, just on the fly that I had applied for it, and I wasn't experienced in coaching at all at that point. Was the kind of I remember being on the plane to America. And it was one of the big Virgin massive planes, transatlantic ones, and there was like you get the TVs in the back of the seats. It was actually a SNES Super Nintendo that they had, and I was playing Mario on it all the way to America, and I remember stopping once and just thinking, what am I doing? I'm on my way to America to live. I'm 18 and now I'm playing Mario in the back of a plane. It's just like it was just. I remember thinking, oh God, and I remember having a bit of a panic, like, have I bitten off more than I can chew here? And the other bit for me was a bit of validation. This one was a couple of months after I joined Nairn, and I'll always be thankful to him. I got a phone call from. I was just sending my reports, and they were always like, "Bro, thank you very much, Calum. Thank you very much, Calum." I got a phone call from Stevie Mackay, and just to say thanks, and he said, your reports have been absolutely brilliant. They've really helped with the team's organisation when it comes to planning sessions. He goes, you know I really know that it takes a lot of time. It's not just going to watch the game. There's the hours afterwards that you're sitting there writing these reports, looking through notes and all these things. And he was just really grateful. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, wow, that's so nice. You know what I mean? I've never had that, where someone's just actually taking the time out to consider how long it takes you to do these things as a volunteer and then just thank you for it. So yeah, I that meant a lot to me. That my opinion that God, I actually know what I'm talking about here. He's thanking me for this,
How much hours a week do you kind of work, in terms of your scouting with Nairn, would you say? Does it just depend on how much games are on, if there's a midweek one or,
Yes, I mean sometimes I'll usually every Saturday there's a game to go to. So that's just about looking at the fixtures and seeing, right, well, Nairn have got this team coming up next Saturday. Who are they playing this Saturday? Right, I'll go to that. So it's just about that. And then, so there's the traveling time. Do you know what I mean? So like I say, I go to places like Forest, Huntly, Rothes, Tariffs occasionally. And so there's a travel time to there, can be anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, and then there's an hour and a half at the game, travel time back. So you've already consumed a few hours there, and then I like to do the report. I like to start the report Saturday night and then finish it Sunday morning and get it off to them because it helps them plan their Tuesday and Thursday sessions, for the plan for the game on the Saturday. So, and it's also fresh in your mind at that point as well. So, I mean, to do the report can take me, because I choose to put in so much detail and information to it. it can take me a good 5 hours, 5.5 hours to write up a report, all in all. So yeah, that's why I break it down over like a little bit on the Saturday night and finish it off on the Sunday morning. So yeah, it's you know, there is a bit of investigation work as well because I do like to put in some stats and stuff. So I have found a particularly good website that is my little pride and joy that I've found it, and it's the only place I know that has any kind of detail in the Highland League. And then I'll take those and I'll deep dive into them and try and see if I can expand those stats in any way that would help the team, because you can bend stats to look to look wherever you want, So yeah, it's a lot of time, but I genuinely enjoy it. I look forward to my Saturdays and I look forward to writing. I get so geeky about doing the report, and I'm like, oh God, right, no, I need to put in more, so I'll just keep writing more. And I got myself with some vouchers I got over Christmas. I bought myself a dictaphone so I can give myself verbal notes during the game, because I do find sometimes that when I'm writing notes, your head's down and you're missing what's going on. So I bought myself one of them so I can just talk about what happens, who's doing what, and I feel more comfortable with the verbal notes, and I don't miss anything that's going on. Because I remember the first time I went to watch scout a game, I missed the first goal, and I remember thinking, it's fine, I'll see it on the replay. There is no replay. You're watching this live. It's like, if you miss it, you miss it, So, yeah, I bought myself one of them. So, yeah.
So were you a big fan of Football Managers as a youngster? Or?
Yeah, so obviously I do work as a research assistant for Sports Interactive, and the Football Manager. So back when it was Championship Manager, I've played it since 1992.
Yeah.
And it was Championship Manager then, and I was hooked. I was hooked at that point. And at that point, the game was probably a glamorous PowerPoint at that point. And it's evolved so much now that obviously professionals pay attention to it to a degree. I know Alex McLeish's son told him to sign a 15-year-old Lionel Messi, based on his game with Football Manager. And we all know what happened with him. And it gets it wrong sometimes. You've got the likes of that young American kid. What was he? 15-year-old American kid. I don't remember his name now, but he went off to Benfica from America and then just never really made it. But yeah, I've played every single one. Quite serious. I'm not at the point where I wear a suit for press conferences or hold press conferences in the toilet or anything like that. I've not really gone down that road. It has. It's never really ruined a relationship. It has impeded them. But yeah, I still play it now to this point, and I've currently got an amazing save at the moment where I think I'm 64 in it now. So yeah, the only problem I find with Football Manager is when I was younger, it used to always be quite funny because you were a manager at like 28, 27, and now I'm a manager, and now when I start a new career, I'm 41, and I'm like, there's not much of the game to play now. It's like, so yeah, it's good. It definitely the wife is very accommodating to my Football Manager time scale.
Yeah. So what's your kind of full-time job?
So my day-to-day job, the bill job, the one that pays the bills, is I work for Vodafone as a service desk advisor. So we deal with don't deal with the public. It's more business to business sort of things.
Yeah.
We push buttons on a laptop and it fixes things somewhere else in the world. But yeah, it's good. I enjoy it. It certainly keeps a roof over my head. It's a challenging job. That no 2 days are ever the same.
Mm.
So that's the best I could hope for, you know. But like football, you know, no 2 games are ever the same, you know. So if things are like that, it keeps me guessing, it keeps me on my toes, and keeps me challenged.
Thanks for listening to this interview with Calum. You can click subscribe to the podcast on Podbean, Apple, Spotify, or any other podcasting platform that you use. Also, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as well. Hope you can join me next time for another interesting interview.